Hello Chathams, welcome to my slapdash video regarding Angelo's 1805 Cutlass drill. It's a little slapdash, but hopefully you'll bear with me here, and things that I don't get to in the video, hopefully I can elaborate with in the comments. So the first thing you'll need to know is your stance or your attitude. Just very quickly, take your left foot or your non-dominant foot and create a kind of a 45-degree angle. Bring your dominant foot, bring the arch of that foot back to that heel, and then take kind of a nice half lunge forward. And that's generally your stance. Your heel should not be in line, and your left foot kind of stays at that 45-degree angle where your right foot is pointed right at your opponent. From there, your non-dominant arm will be pinioned to your side or your hip with your elbow not presenting so as to not get cut off. And then with kind of a relaxed arm, you're going to present your sword forward, tip threatening your opponent, but you don't need to get really crazy with it. You can see here better that my heels are not in line. I repeat, my heels are not in line. Your stance should not have your heels in line, and your body should be bladed but not profiled. This allows for a nice presentation for strikes and parries, and it also means that if you retreat or need to advance quickly, you're not running into your own heels and tripping yourself up and possibly getting killed. So the entire basis of the Angelo system is basically the half lunge, both forwards and backwards for your attack, your parry, and your riposte. Parrying has another bit called slipping the leg, which I'll hopefully get to in a little bit. That's a little advanced for a beginner course, but there you go. So with a half lunge forward to make my strike, I present my forward leg forward into kind of a half lunge position. You'll see me slowly making my way there. But notice that the first thing that lands is not my toe, but rather my heel. My heel plants nicely. You can almost hear a thud if the sound were on for this video. And then my toes follow with kind of another thud. And the whole emphasis behind that is that you are creating more force as you're driving forward, but also creating nice support by which to make your strike. As I make my strike, I'd say that's a cut one. I present my sword and my blade and edge forward, but notice how I'm not leaning over, I'm not overextended, and I'm not leaning back. It's very nice, stout, round. I've got a nice, stance forward, and I'm not overextending myself, because English swordsmanship is all about, if you're any age, at any health level, you should be able to do it. This isn't longsword. You're not making this nice long lunges or big sweeping cuts at your opponent. Staying relatively conservative. A brief note about that recover is that when I make my recovery to my original stance, my forward leg does come back, but not quite all the way. Should still maintain that position. Now getting to the cutting circle, there's 8 cuts in total, and here's a tip. All odd number cuts are to the inside of the body, all even number cuts are to the outside of the body. The inside of your opponent's body is basically to the left of his sword, or to the non-dominant side of his blade. In this case, you can see a majority of my body is to the inside of my blade. The outside is whatever's on the other end of the blade, other side of the blade. You can see my outside is mostly my arm, portions of my leg and my head, but that's about it. That's cut 1. Cut 2, cuts 1 and 2 are to the shoulders. Cut 3 is upward and in. Cut 4 is upward and actually in. Cut 3 is upward and out. Cut 5 is horizontal across the inside of the body. Cut 6 is horizontal across the outside of the body. Cut 7 is to the inside head, and cut 8 is to the outside head. I'm going to try and slow these down here a bit. So here's one with a little bit more slow motion. So cut 1 is coming to the shoulder. Think about cutting the shoulder down to the waist for cuts 1 and 2. Cuts 3 and 4 are kind of the opposite. They go along the same line, but on the inside and outside, you're going to make these upward cuts, basically from the waist, trying to end at the shoulder, if you think about that line. Cuts 5 and cut 6. Imagine your opponent's nice, glistening chest in this, suppose this sword fight. You want to cut right across that chest, just right there. You don't want him to have a chest anymore. Cuts 7 and 8 are these nice, steeply angled descending cuts on the head. And you can think about if you have a very thin mohawk at the very top of your head, like I often do, about 2 inches to either side is about where you're aiming, kind of at the crown area. So this is a bit more emphasized for the lines. It's cut 1, cut 2, again, to the inside, even to the outside. Cut 3, cut 4. Look at those nice blade extensions. Yeah, I'm great at this. Cut 5, cut 6, cut 7, and cut 8. Moving on to parries, all the parries have the appropriate names corresponding to the cuts. So that's parry 1, parry 2, parry 3, parry 4, parry 5, parry 6, parry 7, and parry 8. So hopefully in this next bit of slow motion, oh, and also don't forget your salute. Come on, you heathens. But in slow motion, I can describe these a bit more. So parry 1, you kind of bring your blade right there to the inside. Same with with parry 2. You're just creating this nice barrier between you and the opponent's blade. You keep a bent arm. If you exert yourself too much, you'll wind up overshooting your parry and getting cut anyway. Parries 3 and 4 are kind of the same thing. Your point is down to intercept those upward blows. Parries 5 and 6. Parry 5 is pretty easy. I call it the window parry. Point down to the inside. Parry 6 is more difficult. It's kind of this weird point out, attempting to get that. Parry 7 is what's called Garde of St. George. I call it inside Garde of St. George. And parry 8 is outside Garde of St. George. Those are both nice window parries where you've created what's called the iron hat you can advance under and protect yourself. Seen here is this nice advance to my opponent. And what you're seeing here, I think I have slow motion later, is that I'm not making these full passing steps forward. I'm kind of shuffling my way forward and back. I'm keeping my feet in the same general area with these nice half lunges back and forth, and advancing with cuts and parries just really rapidly. The idea is that you really don't give your opponent a chance to breathe, and when they do riposte or counter cut, in whatever sense, you're able to really quickly able to cover yourself in your retreat and your advance, and give them as minimal opportunities as you can to riposte or cut you, with a maximum opportunity to advance on them, take their ground, and cut them in return. It's really a cool idea that a lot of modern fencing has lost. So here you see a couple of my interpretations of the attitude. So that's a very nice erect standard attitude that we have there. We've got this nice presentation, this nice bladed but not profile stance. And really I can defend myself from pretty much any direction here. Another interpretation I have, when considering that this was a common practice to be used, well, in boarding actions, is a little bit more relaxed. I'm just kind of standing there. I've got one foot or the other forward. My blade's out in front of me, but I'm not counting on having a lot of room. This other stance, I call the Saviola, who's not really a contemporary of Angelo, but a predecessor. And he likes to have his hand available to be used to help guard himself or brace himself. So he kind of keeps it up in the chest area. But you can also effectively do that by just keeping it at your side and out of the way. And here I demonstrate the really extreme speed that adopting this stance, especially in a shipboard situation, can give you as an advantage over your opponent. Here in this next advance, so you'll see me using a technique that I call bell guarding, or guarding with your actual guard. And it's kind of just punching into the air where you believe your opponent's blade is going to be, controlling that zone, and then using it to displace your opponent's blade and then cutting rapidly down into them. A lot of these things I'm demonstrating in this video, I will definitely elaborate on in person, but it's really hard to explain in video format. It's something that I would much rather have people here to do and see and, all that. So we're going to see in these last two clips are some slow motion renditions of bayonet and pike displacement techniques, both from George Silver, an earlier English swordsman and instructor, and not really a fencing master, but really kind of a thug with a sword who knew what he was doing. And then Angelo, who demonstrated in several posters how to displace these points. But it's not something I really expect to get into right away with a lot of this group, because I'm not really sure what everyone's comfort level is with handling any sort of blade-like weapon or doing drills, and it's just kind of more to give an idea of what can be in the future. There's this big misconception throughout history that swordsmen were helpless against bayonets and pikes because of the reach. And while that's true to some degree, there's a lot of precedent of swordsmen going against formations of pike and bayonet, and because of the reach of their weapons, and also the individual skill of a trained swordsman as opposed to a soldier who was handed a pike or a bayonet and told to go fight a war, is that you could pretty easily, with enough technique, displace the point of a pike or a bayonet and rapidly close distance, not allowing your opponent to draw their secondary weapon, and in doing so, neutralizing them, either through incapacitation or death, and then kind of just mowing down the rest of the formation. This is a technique that was probably quite common aboard ships, especially when presented against boarding pikes and bayonets, and it's just hopefully something we can work towards. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to try and do some of this with you lot at Grand Tactical and also at other events and gatherings we have, but enjoy, and I hope this primer kind of whets your chops. I don't really expect anybody to come away with perfect understanding of the Angelo drill right away, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what exactly we're doing. Gunner Shoe, signing off.